Hi, welcome back to Bindwaves. I'm Carrie, stroke survivor and Bind member, and we have a special treat for you today. Kezzy is on vacation, so we have Kevin from the Fort Worth office clubhouse filling in today as our guest co-host. Hopefully you listened to last week so you can learn more about Kevin. If not, go listen to it now.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me. My name is Kevin, and I'm a brain injury survivor, and I'm from the Fort Worth Bind.
And today we have Justin, who is a speech therapist. We're happy to welcome him as our guest today. He met his wife of 7 years on the job at Pate. He's also another doggy daddy. So we've got lots of dog lovers in this podcast. We need to have an episode just strictly on our animals. That's for future. But welcome, Justin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome to Bindwaves, the official podcast of the Brain Injury Network of Dallas. I'm Brian White, Bind's Executive Director. On each episode, we'll be providing insight into the brain injury community. We'll be talking to members and professionals regarding their stories and the important role of Bind's Clubhouse. We work as a team to inspire hope, community, and a sense of purpose to survivors, caregivers, and the public. Thank you for tuning into Bindwaves. Let's get on with the show.
You just kind of start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been a speech therapist.
Yeah, sure. So I work for Pate Rehabilitation, and I've been there for almost 11 years now. So I was an intern back in 2011, and then they hired me at the end of that. So I've been there ever since.
Awesome.
So can you tell us what made you want to get into speech therapy and a little bit about the process of becoming a speech therapist?
Sure, yeah. So my path to speech therapy was a little different than most. My undergrad is actually in business. I went to Texas A&M and I majored in IT. When I got out of college, my mother is a speech therapist in the public schools, and so I always knew I wanted to do something to help people. Mm-hmm. So I went back to graduate school at UTD, and it took me about 6.5 years to go through the whole program, with undergrad included. So it actually worked out well because I had the technology background with speech therapy, and it actually combines better than you would think. So,
and that's interesting. I was going to say, that's kind of a big jump to go from IT to speech therapy.
Definitely.
So was that a master's degree that you have? Okay.
Yeah, master's degree in communication disorders.
Oh, okay.
Communication disorders? Mm-hmm. Is that what it's called? Okay. Yeah. I don't think I knew that. So that's interesting. So one of the things, everyone thinks about speech therapy, it's kind of obvious, but then it's not so obvious. There's all kinds of different things. So what are some of the other responsibilities that maybe aren't speech related that you have to deal with? Kind of like, swallowing. I had issues with swallowing because I was completely paralyzed on the left side. So I had a face droop, and I was on thickened liquids. Ugh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I quit drinking coffee after that.
Yeah, nobody wants to be on thickened liquids, but
no.
Yeah, swallowing is a big deal after a brain injury. Me specifically, I work with a lot of the assistive technology. I'm a assistive technology professional, so I got certified in that in 2018. And what I do is I go into people's homes and I use home automation devices to kind of couple that with a therapeutic purpose.
So kind of like Alexa?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
So like kind of building a digital therapist within the home for people that have issues with initiation or memory. And I've started the assistive technology program at Pate now, and so I'm starting to go into more homes, and I also created labs at each location. So it's a fully voice-activated room with the bed, the blinds, TV, lights. Everything is voice-controlled through Alexa.
Very cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Knowing that all brain injuries are different, after my stroke, I had aphasia. Mm-hmm. So I knew that what I wanted to say, but I just couldn't get the words to come out. In my mind, it sounded great. And then when I spoke it, it was totally different. So what are some different speech deficits that go along with traumatic brain injuries?
Yeah, sure. So the main one, like you're explaining, is aphasia, where it's just the loss of language. You know what you want to say, but it's just not... Either it's not coming out the right way or it's not even coming to your mind. Now, a lot of times with aphasia, there's apraxia, And that's more of the motor planning component, like what you were describing, how you know what you want to say, but there's like a disconnect between your brain and your mouth. And then another one is dysarthria, where it kind of presents as like slow, slurred speech, and it affects intelligibility. So those people have to use strategies to try and slow, be very articulate, over-articulate their sounds in order to be understood.
All right. Well, I'm talking about aphasia. So how does that work with the Alexa setup like that? If people can't get the right words out or they don't know, how does that work? Because that sounds kind of difficult.
Yeah.
If I can't speak or I don't know what I want to say.
Right. So what I've done is I've also I program a lot of devices for patients. And so like I put into an iPad, it's a speech generating software. I put all the commands for Alexa into the device to where the person, if they are having speech difficulty, they could actually push the button and it would talk to the Alexa. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of a way around it to where everybody could use some type of home automation device.
Okay, that's cool.
Amazing. Yeah. I love that. I need to go to my house.
Yeah, well, y'all need to come when y'all are at Pate. I can show you the lab.
We'll have to do that next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I know I always tease my speech therapist that I had because I was lucky enough to not have aphasia. I'm a talker. If you haven't learned in the 5 minutes that you've known me that I like to talk, I don't know what I would do if I couldn't talk. But I teased my speech therapist because I had an impy because of my face droop. So she would put, the impy, the electrodes on my face and shock me. She just had fun doing that. I would sit across the table from another guy getting his face shocked and we'd just sit there and laugh at each other as we make crazy faces. But so kind of that, what else along with that other than just speech, are there, because like the facial droop and swallow, what other kind of things does speech therapists work on?
Well, a lot of times people think that speech is only the actual production of speech, but like by profession, we're a speech language pathologist. So language is way more than just speech. So you're talking about reading, you're talking about writing, you're talking about all these different modalities. So a lot of it goes into the language component, plus the cognition part of it. So attention and memory, problem solving. I would say more of my day is spent doing cognitive therapy than it is actual quote unquote speech therapy. Yeah.
That's kind of what I think with mine. It was more cognitive and doing number problems, and I don't like numbers. And I know my biggest problem was I had left side neglect. So she would give me word problems, and I would always start in the middle of the page.
Sure.
She'd be like, Carrie, you have to start on the left. You're never going to find the words.
And I bet she drew a yellow line down your side of your paper.
I didn't see it. Like Jasmine over there, I wouldn't even know that she was there. So, yeah. It's one of the things people don't think about, that it's not just speech.
Right.
Are there, so the normal person isn't going to have a technology-based room set up like that. So what are some different adaptive devices that people can use at home, or things that they can use at home to improve their cognition, their speech? What are some of the things they can do at home?
Sure. Yeah, I'm really big on apps. So I made a list. I could bring y'all this list, but basically I narrowed it down to the top 4 apps based on 24 different categories: aphasia, articulation, reading, comprehension, naming, writing, and it has the apps that kind of go with that. But, most people have a smartphone these days, so apps are a really big thing that you can use. iPads are really... they're very common now too. But as far as for like reading and comprehension, there's a company called Tactus Therapy, and they do some really great apps. Now they do cost a little bit of money, but they're not free apps, but they work on phrase completion, sentence completion, reading comprehension, and things like that. So
I use an app on my phone. It's called Luminosity.
Yes.
And I really have noticed a significant improvement in the time it takes me to process a problem.
Yeah, there's also a couple more that are for cognitive skills. So Lumosity is a good one. Peak is another one. Brainwell, and there's one called Elevate. They all work on those cognitive skills of memory, attention, problem solving. So those are some other good ones.
Okay, great. And that was kind of what I was going to ask, but I'm going to take a quick little break and ask y'all to go ahead and click that like button while you're listening so that we can do that. And if you're interested, we'll get Justin to email us all this info, some of the apps that he's talking about. If you're interested, you know how to email us. Let us know. And but yeah, that's what we had. Several members wanted to know if there were additional therapies for reading and comprehension that they can do on their own, and that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so with the Tactus therapy, they break it down by comprehension, reading, writing, and naming. And then once you progress through those 4, they have an advanced version of each app as well. And each app has probably 700 to 1,000 exercises.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of stuff to do within those apps.
That is one of the things I noticed with Luminosity is they have a select, I think it's 3 games that you do each day to train, but they're very repetitious. And so I was looking for something with a little more diversity versus just having those.
Yeah, you may try Elevate or Brainwell. I could show you those on your phone or something like that. I know some of them are subscription based, but they have more exercises. They're not just those drills like you have in Lumosity. So.
Right. Yeah, I know. I have one of our friends, one of our founding members, Carl, he always teases that, his speech therapy that, you have to relearn the alphabet, A, B, C, D. He said, I figured out if you say Z and P enough times, eventually you're going to get it right. And
that's true.
Yeah.
Brain needs repetition, that's for sure.
Yeah. So that's, one of those things. But so those are good. We'll have to get the list of those going because that would be a great resource to add to Bind so that as members come on or as people just have questions when new brain injuries happen, we try to be a resource for other people.
Yes, ma'am.
We'd love that.
So coming from a healthcare professional, because I was a nurse, or I am a nurse, I've been a nurse for over 30 years, and you always have those patients that are reluctant to engage, whether it be because whatever, they're self-conscious or they makes them feel stupid or whatever. How do you engage that patient that is resistant to try to get better?
Sure. Well, number one, it takes patience, right? You got to be patient with everybody. But more, you have to play into their interests. Right. You have to play into their hobbies. You have to do work on things that are salient to them because nobody wants to be in rehab. Nobody wants to be there going through that. Right. So you have to really play into what they like in order to get their buy-in. And I've noticed if you do that you can build good rapport with them over time. You just, so I know, like, for an example, I had a guy that was a prison guard and all he wanted to do was go back to work. Mm-hmm. And so what we ended up doing was hiding things around our treatment floor so that he could go and search for contraband.
Oh, wow.
So, see,
that's a great idea.
We made like a real life simulation of what it would be like for him to go back to work, and he did go back to work. So
yeah,
but
that's great.
Yeah.
And I know that's the other thing, like with speech. One of our members that we've had on the podcast in the past, she had to work with, when she went back to work, she had to work with her manager, and they do everything by text. And she has an app, I guess, on her computer, where she can speak and it translates for her. But then, she makes sure that all of her fellow coworkers email her and text her so that she can, because she can read. She just has it. And she's also has, and I guess that's one question to talk about, just not maybe finding the words, but some people have hearing issues as well that come from the brain injury. So what are some different things that you can do that help with that, other than, like I'm saying, just text as opposed to speaking?
Yeah, that would be my main thing to say. There's one like called Dragon Dictation where you, or that's one that I think you actually type it out and it speaks for you. But yeah, hearing is a big component as well. I'm not as familiar with hearing, though, as far as apps or anything like that, but I'm sure there's stuff out there that could assist.
Yeah. And I know I was at Pate in a couple of months, and there was a lady there, a young lady, in a wheelchair, and she didn't look like she couldn't use her arms either. And she had a device that she was like looking at the letters.
Yes.
And it spoke for her.
Right.
I mean,
so
that's crazy.
That's an eye gaze system. So that's what I'm really big into, is programming devices like that. So you could have something as simple as an iPad, that you could select something and it's going to speak for you. But then if you have somebody that has limited mobility and can't speak, you go to something higher technology like an eye gaze system, where it's actually reading the retinas of the eyes based on the calibration of her eyes. So she was able to fully make sentences and everything, all of her thoughts. And before we knew, what was going on with her, we didn't know, was she in there, what's going on. We give her the device and it just unlocks this world of speech, So,
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really great.
I just think it's so funny because I was in healthcare for so many years. I never knew that there was so much involved in speech therapy. And because it's speech therapy, we just think it's that part of, the speech.
Talking, that's it.
But there's so much more. And and it's really funny because every department is like that. There's so much more involvement from the staff and how they interact with patients and the benefits they have for the patient. And I just thank you for doing what you do, because it's amazing. It definitely helps.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's the thing I've learned, because you're our speech therapist. We've had a physical therapist and we've had an occupational therapist, and both of them have said that really all of y'all work together. It's not PT, OT, ST. It's y'all are a team, and y'all all know the patient. Y'all work together to get the patient on the same page. And
yeah, especially at PATE, that we're definitely interdisciplinary, where if you're standing in the standing frame, they're going to be working on your arm for OT, and they're going to be working on your speech for speech therapy. Because that's how, or if I have somebody in my room doing speech, maybe they go in the standing frame and do their activity on a tabletop.
Right.
That way you can, do two things at once.
Right. So just kind of thinking about, we're talking about this. So what are some of some of your success stories that really get you going and get you excited about what you do? Yeah,
so I can definitely think of two right off the bat. When I was a student, I did the eval for a gentleman who came in, a young man. He had an AVM, and for our listeners, will you say what an AVM is? I know I've heard it, but I can't. I believe it's arterial venous malformation. So it's basically where you have a weakening of arteries all in the same area of the brain, and you're born with it. So you don't really even know anything's wrong until something happens. And it presents like a stroke. So I did his eval, and he was so apraxic, meaning his motor planning was off, that I told him to touch his nose, and it took him almost 20 seconds to figure out how to get his finger to his nose. Now, this guy was an endodontist, so he did the inside the tooth work, so root canals, things like that. Fast forward through his recovery, he went back to being an endodontist.
Wow, that's amazing.
And think about how much, fine motor that takes and everything.
Yeah.
And then another one I can think of was I had a young woman that came in and she couldn't say a single sound. So she would open her mouth and nothing would phonate at all. And as we used the iPad day after day, she'd come in and a new sound would be made, a new sound would be made, a new sound, until she was talking in full sentences. And fast forward through her recovery, she opened 2 nonprofit organizations.
Oh, wow.
So she went, she didn't go back to her employment that she was at, but she found a new purpose in life and was helping other people. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Those are great stories. Thank you for sharing with us. So that's just, I know, we had a friend, or one of our members, he started, that was the same thing, I laugh at him because when he first woke up out of his coma, he could only say noodle. That was noodle for everything. And he was a sales guy, so he was reading everyone's eyes, and he'd be like, I want a drink of water. But what he was saying was noodle, 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 noodle. And the people were just looking at him dumbfounded, and he's like, why are you not understanding me?
Right.
And so it's crazy how the brain works.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, Justin, and thanks to all of you for listening. If you want more information or would like to contact us, you can email us at bindwaves@thebond.org.
And if you want more information about Justin, you can probably email Pete, find out about him there if you're wondering about, and like I said, we will get a list of the information he told us about and have it here at Bind. So again, email us at bindwaves. You can do that. But right now I want to remind you again, click that like button and go ahead and share and let everyone know. Continue listening, subscribe, and we thank you for listening to us. And we can't wait to have our next guest and see you next time on Bind Waves. Thanks, Justin, so much.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Bind Waves and continue to support Bind and our nonprofit mission.
We support brain injury survivors as they reconnect into the life, the community, and their workplace.
And we couldn't do that without great listeners like you. We appreciate each and every one of you. Continue watching. Until next time.
Until next time.